Hi, I'm odeean. Today I'm having a look at the differences between Hasbro's Masterpiece Optimus Prime and Takara's MP10. This video is primarily a comparison, but if you'd like more on how to transform the figure and how to play with it, I have a video on my channel for this guy which goes into all of that in more depth. So, comparison. When you look at the two primary figures in the set, these guys, the thing that gets you straight away is colour. MP10 has a higher level of gloss, and the Hasbro version looks more like moulded toy plastic. So I guess that's aimed at it just got to do with the markets, with this one being a kids release ostensibly, whereas this one is more of a collector's market item. But the Takara version, especially the red areas, it does look much nicer for my money. The head colour and the other blue plastic, on the Takara version we have a rich deep blue which is more similar to the original G1 toy colours, whereas with this Optimus Prime, the Hasbro one, it's a lighter blue, more like the cartoon, and if I remember correctly it looks more like maybe the G2 Prime, the one that has the black trailer. I have that buried away somewhere here. So both of them have kind of links to the toy history of the character, and I guess that comes down to personal preference. My preference in this case is with the darker colour. I like that. It makes me think of my old Optimus, one of the first toys that I got that was Transformers. So for me, again, the Takara version is winning out. The chrome areas are the same, so neither one has any advantage in the smokestacks and the silver trim around the windows, the chrome on the fuel tanks at the side, and the chrome on the grille. The, what do you call this, a skirt, the sort of hip armour groin section is almost identical on both, just a slight difference in the colour of the yellow plastic, but nothing to really talk about, as is the gold coloured plastic on the forearms. Again, almost exactly the same. The Hasbro version has some yellow detailing on the light sections on the top of Prime's chest, where the Takara version has none. And that's a little bit surprising. When I think about it, I'm surprised Takara hasn't put paint on these, because it would have looked really nice, and there's no point to have that moulded detailing of a light without actually painting it. Looking a bit more closely at the Autobot symbols, they are very similar, but at least on mine, the Hasbro version has a little bit of a imperfection in the thickness of the white. Although I'm not sure that it's showing up on the camera here, I can see it in person where the red is grainily coming through the top of the white section, but that may be just this individual piece. Finally, when it comes to paint, we have the eyes. Now, one of the big complaints with the Takara version of Prime is that his eyes look dead because they're very dark in colour. If you actually get a really close look at them with light shining into the eye themselves, if I can focus on it, even this picture can't pick it up. The eyes are actually see-through plastic that has a little bit of a shine to it. There is no light piping, but if it was a standalone piece of plastic, it would probably look pretty vibrant. But in the toy itself, with the dark coloured plastic around it, and with no light piping coming in from the back, you can see on the back it's just a solid block, it does look very dark, very dead-eyed Prime. In and of itself, that wasn't too much of a problem for me, but for a lot of people that put them off the figure. If you look at the Hasbro version, you can see that the eyes are painted, again, focus, the eyes are painted a very light blue, and that's to catch, and it's not see-through, so the paint has been put over the see-through section. That's to bounce back any light that they can, instead of greedily sort of holding on to it, so you can see it more easily from almost any angle. And it does look good. Looking at that, the paint is well used there, and even on the different paint scheme, if they had painted these eyes, it would have been much better. But that's quite an easy modification for anyone to do themselves. So I'm not going to focus on that too heavily when I'm weighing up which one is the best to have. I'm sure that it would only take me 5 minutes to pull his head apart with a screwdriver and paint his eyes, or even swap them would probably be easy enough. Turning around to the back. Now, there's no great difference between the backs of these figures, except for the plastic colour. And again, I would say that the Takara one is more glossy, and even though I don't think it is painted, it looks a little bit more painted than the Hasbro one, but no great difference in the appearance of these guys. You can see that one minor difference is that on the back, or where his backside is, the paint colour is blue on the Takara one and red on the Hasbro one, and I'm not sure why they did that. I think it looks a bit more unified with the blue, but it's not a big deal. It's hard to even notice, to be honest. Next comes down to the movement of the figures. So posability is exactly the same. I'm not going to run down on the posability of these guys, but there is a very large difference, at least on my two figures, on the amount of friction that the joints have. So starting with the Takara version, I'm trying to make it so you can hear this. That sound, although it may not be pretty, shows the level of friction that that joint has. If I go to the Hasbro version, move the hand out of the way, there is very little friction here in comparison to this. So if I put the toy up like that, his leg will actually fall down. It's not going to stay in its correct place. If I get the Takara one and give it a pretty decent shake, it won't move. So that is big for me, and when I opened the Hasbro Prime, he is rife with loose joints just like that. And I don't think it's because the tolerances have been degraded due to mold overuse. What I think it is the grade of plastic. The Takara one is higher quality, and you can really feel it when you're playing with it, and that's it's disappointing because this joint here is super loose on this Prime, whereas with the Takara one it's actually very tight. So he can't hold poses in the same way, basically, because he's too loose, and it's not what I would expect. I don't know why they had to sort of cheap out on the plastic. I understand the colour palette choices, and I have nothing against it. It's just a matter of aesthetics. If you like the lighter colour, and they judged that their market, this was the appropriate colour. I've got nothing against that, and there's really not much in the line of swirling, although we do have a little bit of swirling here. It's not got to do with the look. It's got to do with how it turned out, and I think that the Hasbro one is really a far second place compared to the Takara one, and I didn't want that to be the case, honestly. If I had thought that before I bought it, I wouldn't have picked it up. I had seen a lot of reviews, and they all seem to be quite glowing on this figure, so I thought it would be a good thing to get a second copy, maybe a version to play with more than to have on display. But given how loose this is in comparison, I think that I would have chosen not to have bought it had I known that. And that's not to say it's the loosest toy out there, and that's also not to say that Takara don't make loose toys as well. I mean, I know I haven't reviewed this, but this guy, Masterpiece Red Alert, I know that's not what it's called, but you know, MP12, he is a floppy toy as well, and this is straight from Takara. It's got nothing to do with Hasbro, but the floppiness on this guy is really pathetic. So I'm not bashing Hasbro here, I'm bashing the toy, and I just don't understand why it had to be that way. A loose joint that both figures suffer from is this backwards and forwards on the toe, and it makes it, unless you put the feet in a spread position like this, it makes it difficult to pose, where he'll fall forward like this. If I remember correctly, I also showed that in my MP10 review. He has a bad falling habit unless you splay his feet a little bit. So that's kind of a flaw with the overall design, and neither company managed to achieve a good balance with the ankle tilts forward. I think that just about sums it up for the figure itself. So obviously, by what I've said, you can see that if I was going to pick a winner without considering price, I would pick the Takara version. Let's move on to one of the other components. In front of me here, I have one of the trailers. Going by the outside, it's actually hard to guess which one this is. I know which one it is, but I just want you to see my point that on the outside, there's not much of a difference. So there's one, and here's the other. Now, the first one that I showed you is the Hasbro version. The silver paint has been used on the outside, just like it was with MP10, so it looks really good as a trailer. There is a bit of paint bleeding in the detailing of this blue side piece that I don't get with my MP10. So again, on cameras like this in kind of crappy lighting, it might be hard to see, but this lower line is really done crisply on MP10's trailer. On Hasbro's version, there's a bit of bleed over from the line into the silver paint on the bottom, and at first glance it's hard to notice, and it's not something that if it was just a toy I would particularly care about, but the more you look at it, the more obvious it does become, and I mean, it makes this suffer slightly as a display piece, but I guess it's not really meant to be a display piece, so I think that the workmanship is adequate, at least on the trailer. One other little thing to note, and I don't know if this is again just mine or everyone's, the tyres are very black on MP10's trailer, but the rubber that's been used on the Hasbro version looks kind of white. Even if I rub it like that, it doesn't really fix it up. Maybe it's some kind of release agent that's clinging to the rubber, I'm not sure. But again, I don't want to harp, I don't want to seem like that's too much of a problem. The trailer looks pretty good. Going around to the back, it opens up in the same way, and the platform does come out. So, getting the MP10 trailer, it opens up, hang on, opens up much more stiffly, and again this comes out. So what's the difference here? The difference is that the back of the doors in MP10 is silver paint. The ramp is just a plain piece of grey plastic on both toys. Opening up just a second. It's a bit unwieldy. Sorry about that. It's a bit unwieldy to fit in the space that I've got available to me to make this video, so I do apologise for having to pull it off camera like that. Okay, the insides of this toy. The bottom here is a matte plastic. Well, not really matte, but you know, it's not painted. It's a plain grey plastic with no paint whatsoever on the floor and on the sides. This section here, the colour palette matches the colour that we have on the front, on the main part of Prime. As far as floppiness goes, this little, can you see that? This little part here is really abysmally floppy. It's virtually freewheeling here with almost no friction holding it in place. A bit of a disappointment, but there's adequate friction in the arm, and it feels very similar to the amount of friction we get in MP10. The cockpit opens, closes, and we have our little Sam figure. His workmanship, it seems approximately the same as what we get on MP10, but I don't know if it's the same for all versions of this, but his legs popped off on mine at the knee. It didn't happen to me with the one that I got from MP10, but I'm thinking maybe it was because I played with it more. I'm not 100% sure whether it was I just played with it more or it was weaker, but it looks the same. If I get the trailer for MP10 out to look at the inside, what you'll see is that the paint work on the bottom is silver painted. So it's not in the middle section. Both have the middle section being just a plain unpainted grey, but on MP10 we have silver on the edges. And quite honestly, I don't think that's too much of a big deal. I do like the silver, but what would have won me over for both of these guys, if they had done it, would have been to provide stickers and control panel areas for the sides of the trailer. So I would gladly have sacrificed the silver paint for a decent sticker sheet. And the way that they've designed it, there isn't really even a good spot to put stickers. So both of these guys have a lot of detailing on the side parts, but it's not detailing of monitors or anything like that. It's just panel lines, and they kind of preclude the use of a decent monitor-like sticker. And that's kind of annoying for me, because that's what I wanted from Prime. G1 Prime had that, and I mean, it is a base after all. And sorry, again, this part at the back is all the darker blue on MP10 to match the cab. Okay, I'm going to move on to roller. So here's one of the really kind of striking differences between the two sets. MP10 has a silver roller, and I don't really understand why. Any Prime that I had always had a blue roller, but I mean, it looked pretty good anyway. The Hasbro version, for me at least, clearly wins out with this roller. I like the more matte finish that he has. Try to focus a little bit. So I like that slightly matte finish, and I like the colour of blue on this. In fact, this blue, to my eyes at least, seems different than the blue on the rest of the figure, and I like the way that roller looks with this blue, and he maintains the red clear plastic at the top with all the other black details. So I'm glad to get this. I have a few rollers from third-party products, and I know there was a big masterpiece roller released by, I think, BTS before, but this is a pretty decent roller. His gun obviously just fits in the same way. The guns are almost identical, although there is a very, very slight difference in the black plastic, whereas this Hasbro version looks a little bit less black, but you know, that's kind of nitpicking there. So there's a spider on my table. So again, which one you prefer, I guess, just comes down to personal preference. For my preference, I would go with this guy. A little final point of comparison, the Enon axe. So on this side here we have the Takara version, and I'm going to show you that I'm really being forceful here, and it stays in one piece. This is solidly done. They look the same. Check out what happens with the Hasbro version. Very loose. In fact, so loose it becomes almost impossible to play with it on the figure. Every time I pose Prime's arm, this bit just falls off. Something has gone wrong with this. Again, I've only in person seen one of these, so you know, your mileage may vary, but at least on my one, the axe is almost not worth having from the Hasbro version, although they do look the same. So if you're happy with the way it is, you can get it into a position you like and maybe glue it in place, and then you won't have that problem anymore. And given that it has a definite directionality to the moulding where the hand goes in, you only really need to have it in one orientation, so glue wouldn't hurt in this case. Okay, my final comparison, my final thoughts on these guys. We have to talk about price. That's really what it comes down to. I know that in the US, when the Hasbro version first came out, it was about $100, and supposedly this has been available all through the US and in Canada as well as Australia, although a lot of people haven't been able to get it. But I do know that now it is not $100 anymore. It's gone way over that, at least 130 I'm pretty sure is the going rate if you can find it in person overseas. In my country it's around 150, so what I paid is 150. This guy I had bought a long time ago for 250 shipped, which I think was a really good price even back then. Now you'll be lucky to find this in a shop like BBTS. I think this is $300 before shipping now, so to Australia you're probably looking at 350 shipped, and that's not even mentioning what the going rate on eBay would be. So that's my situation, and if I had to choose one of these based on the prices that I would pay, I would pick the Takara version. That's primarily because of the reasons that I've mentioned. The shininess of the mold, and again it's not paint, just the plastic, the degree of shininess in the plastic is better with the MP10. The colours I prefer, I like the dark colours. Nothing against the light colours if you like that, but I just like the dark colours better. And the really one overriding thing that just makes it win hands down for me is the stiffness of the joints. So it's not normal that we can say as a toy the Takara version wins out, but in this case, just because it holds together, holds poses and is stiffer, the Takara version actually wins out as a toy for my money in this situation. And you know, the price difference for me was about $100. So if I had to just have one, my recommendation is go with the Takara. If you can get it a lot cheaper than what I paid, then definitely there may be good cause to go with the Hasbro version, but that's not what I'm saying in this video. This has been my video review for MP10 versus the Hasbro version of Masterpiece Prime comparison. I'm Odeean, and thanks for watching.